Hello and welcome to this week's Wildlife Matters podcast. Get ready to discover one of London's wildest places and little-known treasures, the stunning 211-hectare Walthamstow Wetlands located in the heart of the Lee Valley. And this week on Wildlife Matters Mindful Moments, we'll be joining you in a woodland to enjoy some relaxing nature sounds. But now, let's look ahead to the stories from the world of wildlife and nature which have caught our attention in this week's Wildlife Matters Nature News. Welcome to this week's Wildlife Matters Nature News. And today we have 3 stories to share, starting with this one, which is that the UK's longest river, the River Severn, could soon run dry. Extreme heat this summer has brought the River Severn and the reservoir that supplies it to dangerously low levels, putting wildlife at unprecedented risk. The River Severn, which flows from the Cambrian Mountains in Wales to the Bristol Channel, is a vital artery of Britain's rural areas. And at present, this great waterway is on the point of suffering disaster, putting not only the wildlife that live in it at risk, but also the drinking water supply for millions of people. With almost all of England and Wales experiencing drought, the little rain expected in the coming weeks offers a little promise of easing the crises. The Environment Agency and Natural Resources Wales are raising the alarm as water levels have fallen to dangerously low levels, and authorities are now rushing to find emergency actions to preserve what little water remains. In many parts of the country, over 27 million people are subject to hosepipe bans. The water companies are preparing for even more stringent restrictions, with Southern Water having applied for a drought order to reduce business water use, a decision on which is expected shortly. But at the moment, water companies taking water from the Severn, such as Severn Trent Water, South Staffordshire Water, Bristol Water and Hafren Dyfred, have managed to prevent hosepipe bans from being imposed. Nevertheless, that situation could alter if the crisis worsens. The flow of the river is carefully regulated by the Flyn Clwydog Reservoir in Wales, but that buffer is decreasing rapidly. The reservoir's water level has dropped below 50% and is continuing to fall. If the water continues to decrease, the regulators will no longer be able to control the flow of the Severn, and sections of the river may disappear completely. Migratory fish, birds, and countless other species would suffer a catastrophic outcome. Even more alarming is the fact that around 6 million people might lose access to their drinking water. To try and avoid disaster, regulators are suggesting drastic action, allowing the Severn to drop below its normal minimum levels. Although this is a difficult decision, if the intervention is not carried out, the reservoir may run dry and the river's future would be doomed. The idea is to allow the river to flow at reduced levels rather than let it dry up completely. Additionally, if the drought measure is given the go-ahead, it will also require water companies to reduce the amount of water they extract from the Severn by a minimum of 5%. A spokesman from the Environment Agency told us in a statement that they were very concerned regarding the situation of the Severn. The spokesperson also cautioned that only substantial and continuous rainfall can put an end to this drought. If the drought order is implemented, it might prevent the Clwydog Reservoir from running dry and ensure that Britain's longest river does not disappear, at least for the moment. However, Mark Lloyd, CEO of the Rivers Trust, told Wildlife Matters that even these emergency actions will leave the Severn in a desperate condition. When water levels are critically low, temperatures rise and oxygen decreases, which is a deadly combination for fish and invertebrates, and it triggers a chain reaction that puts the entire ecosystem at risk. It also makes pollution and toxic algal blooms much more likely, worsening the crisis. And as Mark puts it, it's a slow and invisible form of death for the river and its ecosystems, with all the elements gradually decreasing in numbers. A spokesperson from Severn Trent said the company is working closely with the Environment Agency and that rivers supply about a third of its water. At the same time, reservoirs and boreholes provide the rest. The spokesperson also added that although there have been a few local rain showers this summer, has seen less than 5% of expected rainfall and is therefore asking everybody to use water wisely to help protect both our supplies and the environment. Our second story continues with the climate change theme and the impact of this summer's relentless heat on wildlife and its habitats. With Britain scorched by record high temperatures and weeks with no rain in many areas, the big question is how will these weather extremes reshape our wildlife and landscapes? After 5 punishing heat waves and the long hot summer has caused wildfires, it's closed schools and halted travel. But the true damage goes beyond human inconvenience. Even as temperatures cool, experts warn fire damaged land and wildlife species could take years to recover. Plants are dry, grasslands have nearly vanished, and soils are eroding as dust and blowing away quickly. Trees are dropping leaves and fruit far earlier than normal, making July look like autumn. Nature's autumn harvest is crucial for wildlife to survive the colder months. Drought has turned soil rock hard, making life tough for farmers and wildlife alike. And with so little moisture, vital foods like blackberries and seeds have ripened too early, leaving wildlife with empty stores by autumn. Earthworms have burrowed deep for moisture, leaving hungry badgers and birds with very little to eat. Insects are emerging out of sync with nesting birds, disrupting the timing needed to feed chicks, many of which may not survive. But will the wet winters help? Well, adding to the climate chaos, the UK had an unusually wet winter in 25 to 26. The Met Office recorded 42% more rain than average last winter, a clear sign experts warn that climate change is driving more extreme weather swings. All these stresses are tipping the balance of our water systems, threatening wildlife and long-term water security. As heat waves hit trees hard, especially young saplings, heat-stressed trees are more vulnerable to pests and disease, often suffering dieback or sudden branch loss. And for mature trees, damage may not be visible until next year, or maybe even later. The heat waves now threaten nearly every wild animal species. Most wildlife has had a struggle to find water. Birds and mammals rely on rivers, insects, and invertebrates for food. Rising temperatures are also bad news for bees, as their hairy coats make hot weather deadly. If scorching summers continue, we could lose some native bumblebee species entirely. The climate is undeniably warming, but unpredictable. And next summer, it could be a washout, making this year's drought seem a distant memory. Yet we cannot afford to be complacent, and we must keep working to make sure our countryside, wildlife, and gardens to make them more resilient to these extremes of climate change. Our third story this week celebrates some of the amazingly rare birds of prey in the skies above Dorset's land and coastal areas. Late summer is a great time to see spectacular birds of prey in the Dorset countryside, with local wildlife groups encouraging everyone to look up and watch out for these magnificent hunters. August is the best month for watching ravens. Summer visitors, such as the eye-catching osprey and the nimble hobby, join the resident peregrines, white-tailed eagles, marsh harriers, red kites, sparrowhawks, and kestrels, making it a paradise for bird watchers. Looking out for breeding ospreys in the area of Poole Harbour and also keeping an eye on peregrine falcons flying around the rooftops of the busy town centres of Bournemouth and Poole. The osprey's return to Poole Harbour is due to years of dedicated conservation work carried out by the birds of Poole Harbour and the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation, who started the reintroduction programme back in 2017. In June 2022, their efforts were rewarded when a pair of ospreys hatched and brought up a chick in Poole Harbour, the first such breeding by ospreys in southern Britain for nearly 2 centuries. What could be considered even more remarkable is that white-tailed eagles, which had been extinct from the area, were seen in 2021, and then, just 4 years later, in 2025, they managed to breed in Dorset for the first time in more than 240 years. For anyone interested in seeing these stunning raptors for themselves, then Birds of Poole Harbour offers regular cruises aimed at spotting ospreys and many other seabird species, giving you a front row seat in seeing this conservation success for yourself. If you would like to see some of these magnificent wild birds, then go to Poole Harbour or Christchurch Harbour, and inland take a look at Dunyats Heath, Hengistbury Head, the Corfe Hills, St Catherine's Hill, Camford Heath, or the Upton Country Park. And if you do decide to visit any of these places we've mentioned today and share your pictures on social media, then please use the hashtag Urban Wildlife Guide so the local Dorset groups will see your pictures. Thank you. And that has been this week's Wildlife Matters Nature News. It's hard to deny that climate change is happening when we see its effects all around us. The River Severn, one of Britain's most famous waterways, is now actually at risk of drying up. Is that not a clear warning? The extreme heat this summer has affected wildlife by reducing food supplies and impacting on their habitats. It may also influence the future of species both here in Britain and all around the world. It's predicted that 2027 is due to be even hotter and drier, so wildlife is likely to be facing a very tough period. There are few things more exciting than seeing raptors fly over your head, and it has been amazing to watch the Birds of Poole Harbour project thrive, bringing back not only ospreys, but also white-tailed eagles to the southwest coast. Dorset is a paradise for people who love raptors, featuring the stunning hobby and the magnificent marsh harrier, as well as the resident peregrines, which can be seen in both Poole and Bournemouth city centres. Now, join me at the end of another long, hot summer's day as I head to an old woodland, sitting on a fallen branch covered with moss under a mature oak tree. With my recorder, I get ready to enjoy the magical evening soundscape of the woodland. And you can join me in this week's Wildlife Matters Mindful Moments. Wasn't the woodland atmosphere just pure magic? All that beautiful bird song came from just 5 familiar species which you will find probably in your own gardens or local park. Sometimes it's all about stopping and allowing yourself to be in the moment, just like these songbirds who were being present and doing what felt good. They're not singing to attract mates at this time of year, but because they enjoy singing. So here's to that song thrush, blackbird, robin, blue tit and chaffinch, with thanks for reminding us to slow down and for filling our summer evening with such beautiful bird song. Now get ready for a change of scenery as you join me in London at the start of our 2-part adventure to one of London's wildest places, the spectacular Walthamstow Wetlands, a 520-acre oasis teeming with wildlife and steeped in history. On this week's Wildlife Matters main feature. Hello and welcome to this week's Wildlife Matters main feature. And today, Wildlife Matters continues our quest to discover London's wildest places, with a first visit to the remarkable Walthamstow Wetlands, a 211-hectare or 520-acre site, SSI protected nature reserve in East London. The Walthamstow Wetlands Nature Reserve sits beside the River Lee and forms part of the Lee Valley Special Protection Area, or SPA, in the London Borough of Waltham Forest. The Walthamstow reservoirs were built by the East London Waterworks Company between 1853 and 1904 as part of the Lee Valley Reservoir chain, and they're at the heart of this reserve, which has a rich industrial and ecological history. Walthamstow Wetlands is one of Europe's largest urban wetland nature reserves, protected under the Ramsar Convention. Its strategic position in the Lee Valley makes it especially important for wildlife. But Walthamstow Wetlands is more than just a place. It is a vibrant ecosystem that serves as a crucial corridor for migrating, wintering and breeding birds. It's also a haven for diverse aquatic plants, creatures, and some of Britain's most iconic mammals. The site's owned by Thames Water and managed by the London Wildlife Trust. The wetland's 10 reservoirs supply drinking water to around 3.5 million Londoners. Walthamstow Wetlands is easily accessible by public transport. Tottenham Hale and the Black Horse Road tube stations are both within a 10-minute walk, while bus routes 123 and 230 stop nearby on Forest Road. Additional bus routes also serve the area from Tottenham Hale. Paid parking is available at the reserve, and facilities include a visitor centre, accessible toilets, a shop, a cafe, picnic areas, baby changing facilities, and disabled parking. It's free to get into the Walthamstow Wetlands, and the reserve is open daily except for Christmas and Boxing Days. But do check the times as they vary between the high summer, spring seasons and the autumn winter. London has always been a favourite destination of mine, especially the East End, where my family's roots run deep in Greenwich. I arrived by train at St James's Station. I walked along Coppermill Lane, arriving at the Coppermill Lane entrance a few minutes later. Because the nature reserve is so large, with over 13 miles of paths, I decided to make more than one visit. For my first trip, I focused on exploring the earliest reservoirs, which were developed on marshland next to the River Lee between 1863 and 1904. By 1863, the first stage of reservoir development was completed with the construction of reservoir numbers 1, 2 and 3. Collectively, they occupied just under 18 hectares of land and were all hand dug. In 1866, a drought and severe water quality issues led to a cholera epidemic, which triggered the second phase of construction. Reservoirs 4 and 5 were added, and that is where we will begin our adventures for today. Of course, we are here to enjoy the wildlife and the natural surroundings, but before that, it's time to take a look around the Coppermill Tower, which has been the site of a watermill since the Domesday Book in 1086 CE, producing gunpowder, paper, leather, and most recently, copper. The Coppermill building is a Grade 2 listed and has undergone several alterations over the centuries, including the addition of an Italianate tower in 1864. The mill at Walthamstow has been mentioned several times through historic records. In the 14th century, the mill was powered by the Coppermill stream, which was diverted from the River Lee for grinding corn. In 1611, 4 mills were mentioned in association with the manor of Walthamstow. Between 1659 and 1703, the mill was reportedly used as a paper mill, with the adjacent stream referred to as the Paper Mill River. Then, in 1699, the adjacent marshes were noted as Powder Mill Marsh, which raises the question of the mill's use and suggests it may have been used to produce gunpowder during the English Civil War between 1642 and 1651. Accounts from 1703 to 1718 record the mill being used as a leather mill. The mill was described as an old mill until 1806, when it was rebuilt and purchased by the British Copper Company in 1808. The barge brought smelted copper to the mill by boat from Landor near Swansea via the River Thames. The copper ingots were used to produce penny and halfpenny coins. Production of copper ceased in 1857, and then in 1859 the mill was purchased by East London Waterworks Company and modified to drive a water pump, assisting in the construction of the reservoirs we know today. Today, the copper mill serves as an operational hub for Thames Water, and it features a viewing tower that offers a panoramic view of the Walthamstow Wetlands. London Wildlife Trust carried out a £10.6 million scheme to renovate the wetlands in partnership with Thames Water and Waltham Forest Council. In October 2017, the site was opened to the public for the first time in 150 years. It's useful to make a plan of what you want to see, since the Walthamstow Reservoirs complex includes both raised and sunken reservoirs. Thames Water owns and manages them, and their main job is to supply drinking water to Londoners. You'll find 10 reserves on the site, and the first numbered between 1 and 5, and the others all being named reservoirs. It's hard to describe just how big this place is, with more than 13 miles of paths to explore. Because it's in the Lee Valley, the site is an important route for migrating, wintering and breeding birds. From waders to warblers, with a low-cost pair of binoculars, you can see a wide range of species and witness the critical part Walthamstow Wetlands plays in the capital's ecological diversity. Walthamstow Wetlands is essential to the breeding population of London's grey herons, with the wooded islands on Number 1 Reservoir being the location of a famous heronry, which is one of the largest heronries in the whole of the UK. Watching grey herons is captivating, as they are one of the largest birds that you will see in the UK, with a wingspan of around 1.8 metres or 6 feet. Herons are social birds during the nesting season, with most nesting in trees between 10 and 25 metres off the ground. In Walthamstow, it's common to find as many as 10 nests in a single tree on the island. The British Trust for Ornithology, or BTO, has been conducting an annual count of heron nests in the UK for nearly 100 years. They began in 1928. Currently, the largest heronry in Britain is located at the RSPB's Northwood Hill Reserve in Kent. However, before the BTO survey, a heronry in Braid in Sussex was reported to have had over 400 nests in 1866. You can increasingly spot little egrets, small white heron species nesting in Walthamstow and in many other heronries across Britain. Once considered a rare or occasional visitor to the southern part of the UK, little egrets have become a more common sight since 1996, particularly in coastal regions, rivers and lakes. Another large bird species you'll often see in Walthamstow is the cormorant. These diving birds are characterized by their dark feathers and long, thin, hooked bills. Cormorants mainly eat fish and are excellent divers. It's fascinating to watch them swim quickly under the water in search of food, leaving a small trail of air bubbles. The bubbles are often the only sign from above of where the cormorant will pop up next. They are well known for perching on trees or rocks with their wings stretched out. Many people say cormorant feathers are not waterproof, but that is a bit misleading. Cormorants have an oil gland which helps waterproof their feathers, but it's not as effective as in most water birds. And because of this, their feathers can get waterlogged, so they need to dry off between dives to make sure that they stay warm. The former heronry on the island in Reservoir 5 is now home to one of the largest cormorant populations in the UK. We're here in late spring when nature is bursting with new life and vibrant colours, and I have seen both Sam Martin and Swift, which have returned to the UK to breed, while the kingfisher busily darts from perch to perch as it feeds its new family in a nearby bank. The site is covered with horsetail and marsh horsetail, alongside patches of cuckoo flower, garlic mustard, wild garlic and comfrey. Orange tip and peacock butterflies are on the wing, and if you're lucky, you might hear the plop of a water vole as it enters the water from the safety of the verdant reeds along the bank. The signs of summer are emerging. Creeping marshwort is already blooming in the scrape, and meadowsweet is plentiful around the edges, while yellow and purple loosestrife stand out in the links between the reservoirs. There are many types of marshland grasses, sedges and herbs here, and I wish I could describe them all. But just then I spot kestrels busy chasing away a red kite that seems to have flown a little too close to their nest in a nearby tree. This is not typical behaviour for a kestrel, but all birds will protect their young from predators. The kestrel pair works together to drive the red kite away, and after several minutes of determined effort, they succeed. The red kite drifts away on the warm air above the reservoir, searching for shrews, mice, and voles. Over on the electrical pylon sits a peregrine falcon. It is keeping a watchful eye for its supper, but right now it is happy to remain perched high above the lake. Here, on the wild flowers in the borders, I have also seen carder bees. It's hard to believe you're still in London when you visit such a beautiful and wildlife-rich place. There's something here for nature lovers to enjoy all year round. I want to return in late autumn and maybe early winter to see the site through the seasons, when the red-polled cattle come to help control the vegetation, herbs and wild flowers. There are good populations of marsh, reed and sedge warblers along with long-tailed tits, all feasting on the autumn harvest until the colour fades as we slip into the dormancy of winter and the wild residents, such as invertebrates and bird species, seek refuge from the cold weather. In winter, the water levels rise, filling the temporary drains and ephemeral ponds that transverse the marshes, creating a paradise for wading birds. But now, in the early summer, what can be seen at Walthamstow Wetlands? Well, today I have watched the sand martins as they dance through the skies above the crystal clear waters of the reservoirs, catching an array of invertebrates, most of which will have a water-based stage in their life processes. I've often said I'm not a birder, but sand martins are quite easy to spot. They have brown upper bodies and wings with pale, almost cream underparts and a white patch on the throat. They also have a clear chest stripe, which I'm told is more obvious on males, although I'm not sure I could tell the difference while they're flying. Sand martins are the smallest members of the European swallow family, and they travel an incredible 4,000 miles from their winter base in Africa to breed in the UK. As I sit and watch, around 10 to 15 sand martins are perched high above me on a cable from a pylon. But it is the noise that attracts me. A series of loud and shrill alarm calls filled the air as the sand martins responded to a passing carrion crow, which continued on its course across the reservoir as it tried to ignore the cacophony of sound from the gathered sand martins. After the carrion crow had passed by, the sand martins gathered on the cables between the pylons and started to chatter with each other once again. Their calls now sounded completely different from the alarm calls that they'd made just moments before. Turning my attention to the water, I can see tufted ducks. They're medium-sized diving ducks commonly found throughout Britain and across most of northern Europe. The males are characterized by a distinctive tuft of feathers on the back of their heads and their striking black and white plumage, whilst the females are predominantly brown with slightly paler flanks. Tufted ducks are diving specialists, and they can reach surprising depths as they search for mollusks, particularly mussels and aquatic insects, which are their main diet. Tufted ducks do not mate for life. Instead, they form a new pair bonds each breeding season. They usually pair up in winter or the early spring, well before the breeding season starts. Males will perform courtship displays to attract females, although they are generally quieter than other duck species. Once paired, the female assumes all incubation duties while the male remains nearby during the early stages to guard the territory. The nesting period typically occurs between April and June in the UK, during which females will lay 8 to 11 eggs that will hatch somewhere between 25 and 32 days later. The next duck species I can see on the water is the shoveler duck, or more correctly, the northern shoveler duck, which is a very different from the tufted duck, and it is a surface feeder. Even for a non-birder, shovelers are easily recognised by their large spoon-shaped bills, which are perfectly adapted for surface feeding. Like many duck species, males boast a striking appearance characterized by dark green heads, contrasting white breasts, and chestnut sides. Females, on the other hand, display mottled brown plumage, but both genders exhibit distinctive light blue and green patches on their wings when in flight. Outside of the breeding season, male shovelers will transform their appearance to become more camouflaged, taking on mottled brown eclipse plumage similar to the females. Shoveler ducks have a specialized diet, primarily feeding on small insects and plant matter, which they skillfully sift from the water's surface using their large spoon-shaped bills. Shovelers are predominantly found in southern and eastern England, with smaller populations in Scotland and the west of the UK. They'll favour habitats such as marine or intertidal zones, wetlands and grasslands. During winter, UK breeding birds migrate south, and their numbers are bolstered by an influx of shovelers from continental Europe. This migratory pattern ensures a constant presence of these birds in the UK throughout the year. The shoveler duck's call is a unique aspect of their identity. Males produce a clucking sound, while females have a very loud quack that is quite distinct from other duck species. These calls play a crucial role in their social interactions, especially during the breeding season. With my limited bird knowledge, I hope to find a variety of duck species that are all different, and the gadwall meets this criteria. The gadwall is a captivating dabbling duck known for its subtle yet graceful appearance. Unlike its more colourful waterfowl relatives, the gadwall's understated grey plumage often causes it to be overlooked. However, this medium-sized duck has unique features, including its impressive ability to dive underwater more effectively than other dabbling ducks. Gadwalls have developed feeding strategies that set them apart from many other waterfowl species. They are primarily herbivores, feeding mainly on aquatic plants, including stems, leaves, and seeds. They show great adaptability in their feeding habits, sometimes even stealing food from diving birds, a behavior known as kleptoparasitism. During the breeding season, they'll incorporate small mollusks and insects into their generally plant-based diet, providing them with extra protein for successful breeding. This dietary flexibility helps them flourish in the various wetland habitats. Their feeding method usually involves dabbling on the water's surface or upending in shallow water to access submerged vegetation. Unlike most dabbling ducks, gadwalls can also dive to find food in deeper water when needed. Gadwalls are among a few duck species known to be largely monogamous, often pairing with the same mate across multiple breeding seasons. This behavior boosts their breeding success and helps sustain stable populations. During courtship, males perform elaborate displays, including whistling calls and specific flight patterns. The pair bond typically forms during the winter, well before the breeding season begins, allowing pairs to coordinate their breeding efforts effectively. As the afternoon sun begins to set, it's a good moment to conclude the first part of our visit to the remarkable Walthamstow Wetlands. Join us next time as we explore more reservoirs and some of the incredible wildlife that calls Walthamstow Wetlands home. And that has been this week's Wildlife Matters main feature. What a journey through the Walthamstow Wetlands, from its rich, surprising history to its vital role in bringing clean water to millions of Londoners. This wild oasis really is a special place. With incredible wildlife on show all year round, every visit promises a discovery, so grab your binoculars and experience it for yourself. Wildlife Matters will return in 2 weeks for part 2 of our adventure to the Walthamstow Wetlands, when we wade into the reed beds and get up close with some of the wildest residents in the wetlands. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed our first look into the Walthamstow Wetlands or know someone who would, please spread the word, follow us on socials and drop us a comment wherever that you listen to your podcasts. Every share helps more wild ones find our podcast. And that's it for today. As always, stay curious, wild ones. This is Wildlife Matters signing off.